Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life Hacks for Working Moms, the podcast that helps you overcome the overwhelm, embrace the chaos, and cultivate a life you love. My name is Megan Strand, and I am so glad to be here with you today. If you're listening to this podcast, you are probably a parent. And if you are a parent of a child that can speak, you have probably experienced the topic of our episode today, and that is back talk. Rude, snarky comments in response to your authority as a parent. It can be maddening, and I say this from personal experience. Lucky for us, we have a parenting expert today to help us address this dynamic in our homes. Dr. Becca is a child psychologist and host of the blog, Parenting the Modern Family. Hi, Dr. Becca.
Hey, Megan. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm excited to talk about back talk and how we can tackle that as parents today.
Excellent. I can't wait to jump in. First, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family situation and your family dynamic?
Okay, thanks. Well, professionally, I'm a child psychologist. I work full-time at a university clinic here in Southern California, and there I'm able to work with parents all day long. My specialty is working with high-risk adolescents, so preteens and teenagers who struggle with self-harm. You might know that as cutting, and also suicidal ideation. So these are pretty serious teens, and these parents are really struggling with some really serious situations with their kids. And so during the day, that's what I'm dealing with. And then I get to come home on the nights and weekends, and I have two awesome teenagers that I get to enjoy all the time.
Excellent. And how old are your teenagers?
So my son is 16. He's a junior in high school this year, and my daughter is 13, and she's in middle school.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, and I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. So you're a handful of years ahead of me. So I am doubly thrilled to have you as a guiding force on our conversation today.
Oh, great.
So talk a little bit about back talk. I mean, this is minor in the realm of mental health issues for teens and tweens. But when you're dealing with parents, how frequently do you find parents just frustrated with that attitude and that mouthiness with their kids talking back to them?
Yeah, all the time. I don't think there has been one parent client that I have dealt with who hasn't addressed back talk with me at a certain point. Back talk is it's such a hot button issue for parents because, as parents, we go to work, whether full-time or part-time. We're busy dealing with, several kids in our household, but we also have frustrations outside of the family too. And so it's really difficult then to come home and we just want to connect with our kids, right? And our kids maybe are back-talking us, and parents tend to really, get offended by that and disappointed and frustrating. So it's a real hot button issue that parents just wish would go away.
Yeah. And I think you just hit that nail on the head at least for me personally, that emotional, yeah. I don't tend to be overly emotional, I don't think, but here's the thing that makes me insane. If I have just spent time making a nice dinner, what I think is a healthy, nice dinner for my family, and my daughter comes down and she's like, "That is what we are having. Oh, disgusting." I want to throw her into another zip code when she does that. Because I'm like, I don't have to do this.
Right. Yeah,
so,
I hear you.
Yeah,
it's hard not to take these things personally as a parent. And I'm a lot like you, Megan, where I feel like I'm not an overly emotional person, but I do tend to take this personally sometimes because we just want our kids to appreciate the hard work we go to for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are some of you did a great blog post about this and we'll include it in the show notes, but what are some of the reasons that kids do this? Why do they talk back to us?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the reasons why, not because understanding it is going to make the problem go away, but understanding it as a parent will help the parent get into the right mindset to deal with back talk.
Right.
So there are several key reasons that kids back talk. One of them is mostly this is for younger kids, but even teenagers struggle with this as well. But sometimes back talk is the reason behind kids just feel bad inside. They don't know really what they're feeling, but it's this feeling of yuckiness inside. And so when parents maybe say something to the kids, it just comes out as disrespect because they don't know how to communicate to the parent what they're feeling inside because they don't know themselves.
Right. It's just kind of yucky feeling that just whatever is going to come out of their mouth is going to be ugly.
Yeah, and they just want that yucky feeling to go away. And they have this relationship with parents that parents used to help, handle their problems for them when they were babies. They cried, they felt yucky, they cried, they got food, that yucky feeling went away. And so as our preteens, our teenagers, develop, they sometimes regress back to that mode. And it's our job as parents to then teach them, okay, you might not feel great inside, and the appropriate way to behave right here is not with disrespect, but with some positive communication. So that's one reason. Another reason that oftentimes I'll recommend this to parents, and it's like night and day to them. But, kids tend to have predictable triggers. And Megan, you have 2 kids. I have 2 kids. And both kids are not the same in their triggers. So you have to go to the effort to figure out each child's individual triggers.
Right.
But sometimes they're just triggered, they don't want to get up and do something right now. It's hard for them to transition. Or, there's another trigger where they're just, they're not morning people, and anything you say to them in the morning is going to come out as disrespect. So if you could figure out your child's trigger, that is really helpful. And then I also talk to my my clients at work about this thing that I've called HALT, H-A-L-T.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come at your kids with something if they're going to have this behavior backtalk if they are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So if any of those things need to be addressed, if they need to have a snack, or if they haven't had dinner's been late, address the hungriness before asking about homework.
Right.
If they're tired, they're not sleeping great, address the good sleep habits and the good sleep hygiene. And you'll probably find that back talk goes away pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case, especially with one of my kids who I swear she has blood sugar issues. It's like, get the child a cracker quickly because we're going down the rabbit hole here. So we've just talked about a couple of the reasons that kids might talk back, but what are we doing as parents that's really not helping these situations? What mistakes are we making?
Right. So a lot of times, like we had kind of previously discussed before, parents will take backtalk and disrespect personally.
Right.
And so we have to really try to start stepping back from that and realizing that this is a developmental teaching moment. So the more we can practice stepping back and taking the emotion out of the situation, the better the parent can be to use that as a parenting teaching time. So that is one of them. And another thing that a lot of my parents do is they want to overteach, overpreach, or over-lecture during these situations. Do that.
How do you stop yourself from doing that?
Exactly.
Because they give you that like blank stare and they don't respond at all. And so you feel like you just have to keep talking at them.
Right. And
totally ineffective.
Parents think that I haven't said the right words in the right sequence, and it's just a magic word or a magic sequence of words, and they'll suddenly get it. But really, it's repetition. Your kids need to be reminded of this over time before they really get that disrespect is not going to get them anywhere.
Right, right. Well, and, somebody told me recently that with tweens and teens, if you're getting back talk, like a lot of times the first 2 things that come out of their mouth, you just have to completely ignore because it's going to be nasty or ugly or what have you, depending on their mood. And then if you can get past that and not get sucked into the emotion, then that's where you can sort of have a conversation. So is that a strategy, is to just ignore it?
Well, ignoring is kind of a hot button issue with parents because they feel like, well, if they ignore it, then it's going to continue, or it's letting them get away with something.
Right.
But really, it's just like what you said. It's letting them kind of get out this whatever disrespect they said. But your next step as the parent is to not let your child show that it pushed your button maybe, and then to consistently then parent them. And we'll go maybe through some steps that parents can take, but then go through the steps of parenting in that situation. So it's not really about ignoring. It's not letting your child push your buttons. So you're parenting out of emotion. Instead, you're parenting with a plan.
Right. Okay. So let me give you an example. So going back to my example of my daughter being nasty about what's on the table for dinner, which really, there have been several instances where I'll say, go to your room, please. And because it just pisses me off so much. Yeah. And what's a reasonable consequence for backtalk? I'm struggling a little bit between, do I ignore it and just try to make sure my emotions are in check, even though it makes me upset and it hurts my feelings or whatever it does? Do I ignore it, or do I literally say, that's not respectful and X consequence?
Sure. And that's a really good question. First of all, the only time I recommend ignoring backtalk is if you as the parent are so emotionally triggered by it that your next move might come out as yelling at your child, saying something to your child inappropriate. If you're going to do something that is hurtful, ignore it.
Got it.
If you can step back a little bit and parent in that situation, one of the techniques I recommend is to just always have the same boring statement that your child can predict will happen every time they backtalk. My boring statement I use with my kids that I might use in that situation is, well, when you work hard and you've become a parent, you can have whatever meal you want in your household. But right now I've worked hard. I'm the parent. This is the meal I've chosen to have tonight.
I like that. Now talk a little bit more about that strategy, because you talk about it in your blog, and I love this idea, and there's several things to this idea. So can you talk a little bit about that and then positive reinforcement?
Yeah, definitely. So I've found that this works for my own kids, and so I recommend it for my patients at work. And then I hear back from my patients at work that this has also worked for them as well. So I think this is a really good technique. But, you just have a line that your kids know that you're going to say during situations like this. So they know later, their behavior will get them this boring, line and nothing else. So positive reinforcement, a lot of times parents misunderstand positive reinforcement, that it means complimenting your child every time for something. But that's really not what positive reinforcement is. Positive reinforcement is a behavior that you do as a parent when your child does a behavior, when you want your child's behavior to continue. So if you want your child's good behavior to continue, so if you want your child to come to the table and eat what you fixed with minimal complaining, then if they complain about the meal, you give them the boring one-liner, and they know what's going to happen every time they do it, then they're more likely to come to the table and not backtalk, because they know all they're going to get is your boring line.
Well, and I think it's really important to point out that, and this is from your post, and I see myself doing this. It's important to point out that after you give that one-liner, then you shut up. Like you don't then go into the over preaching about how hard you work and how you've prepared everything, which is like what I like to do. Go into all of the nitty gritty details about,
Right. And
so you just have to stop. Like after you give the boring one-liner, the instructions to you are, and that's it.
Oh, definitely. And this is something that I work with parents all the time. This is part of the over-preach.
It's so hard. It's so hard to just be quiet.
and I fall into the same trap myself too, but you just have to give the line and that's it. Because the more you can open the door for your child to negotiate with you, the more they see that you're not resolute in your parenting.
And it's so hard. I have one kid who's a negotiator and one kid who's not. So if I said it to the non-negotiator, they would probably like shrink and, she'd shrink into her shell and not say anything again. The negotiator, if I said that, she's going to come back at me every time, and probably with something even sassier. So the challenge for me as a parent with a kid like that is to just not say anything else. Like stop engaging with her because, you can go back and forth all day long with a kid like that. Sure. And you know what? I happen to know this because I was a kid like that. My dad and I used to go back and forth like this all day long. And my mother would be like, stop talking to her. She's doing what you want her to do.
Right. And it's hard to see that in the moment because you're having emotions, your child is having emotions. So that's why if you know what you're going to do beforehand and you just follow through on the plan, you'll probably see a lot more success.
Okay. Have you heard of any other really boring one-liners from any of your clients? Because I like yours. I'm just wondering if...
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't really ask, but any kind of, something boring that you can say that doesn't spark a challenge, probably could be a good thing. So just like a statement that's just kind of like, this is my worldview and this is what we're doing, right. Period. Yeah. And you don't want to ask them, well, we'll make what you want tomorrow night. Or, you don't want it to be like we're negotiating this right now. It's you're the parent. And, sometimes parents need to be validated a little bit that it's okay to be a parent and it's okay to make rules and it's okay for you to have preferences in your own home. For things like this. So,
and you also said it's important to not have if you are going to be at a place where you're screaming that statement at your kid, that's the time to just not say anything at all.
Exactly. So you definitely don't want to up the ante there. And because I had noticed parents get into that power struggle a lot too, where if they feel personally offended by their child, something that their child said, they try to up the ante and be even nastier. Mm-hmm. And what are you teaching your child in that moment? You're teaching
to up the ante.
Yeah. So you definitely don't want to fall into that trap either.
Okay. So what other tips do you have for eliminating backtalk?
Okay. So another one is first, before your child comes in and they're doing the backtalk, you want to assess your own behavior. Do you model backtalk in front of your kids? And this is something that's a little difficult maybe to be honest with yourself about. But, when your husband, partner, wife comes in and they tell you something, do you backtalk them? Because that's modeling to your child that backtalk is how you behave with people,
Give an example of that.
Sure. So if you're the mom and let's say your husband comes in and he asks you, hey, how was your day, honey? And you're like, why would you bother to ask me that? You always ask me that, or some remark.
Or how do you think my day was?
Yeah, that's backtalk.
Okay.
So you want to show your child, you want to model to your child how you calmly, positively talk to other people. So even if you're annoyed, some of us are, we need a little downtime when we come home from work.
Yeah.
You could just say to your husband, I just got home from work. I need a few minutes. I'll update you about my day after my bath or something like that.
Right. Yeah, so I can see how that would be a hard one to kind of assess your own behavior, but I could see how it would also be an important one.
Yeah. So that's a good one, just to kind of take a step back, notice what you're modeling to your child, and you might need to make a few adjustments there. Mm-hmm. And that could be, life-changing for your family as well. Also remember the HALT triggers that we talked about before, the hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If your child is any of those things, address those emotional and physical triggers, and you'll probably notice a big impact in the back talk. Mm-hmm. And then another big thing that I see a lot, and this happened in my own family, is I always thought my kids were okay with the back talk. They didn't back talk very much until we started watching family TV. So this is when they were younger.
Yeah.
They started watching the Hannah Montana and those other Disney and Nick Jr. shows. And all of a sudden I saw the back talk just really take off.
Yeah.
And so
Funny.
and so I had to institute a rule, and I told them, if you're going to model and imitate the behavior you see on TV, I guess that means you can't handle TV anymore, and it's back to Blue's Clues. And I think we had a week of that, and my kids got it. Like, it's funny when it's on TV because those aren't real families.
Yeah.
But in real families, you don't act that way. So if you notice your kids are picking up behavior from TV, and it could even be from their friends at school. I was
just going to say that, or from friends. Yep.
Yeah. Then you really have to have that conversation with them and tell them, part of growing up is understanding that other people act a certain way because they have different circumstances, but in this family, we act differently. And if you can't handle it, you can't have those friends or that TV or whatever.
Right. No, that's a good one.
Yeah. So they pick up a lot of stuff around them, and it's our job as parents to teach them what is appropriate in our family according to our passions, values, and beliefs. And in our family, this is how we're going to act. And that's okay to do.
Excellent. What else?
Yeah. So another one would be, set limits ahead of time. So this is one of those conversations you're going to have with your kids before the back talk happens. And, just let them know that in your family, you're not going to have certain words or behaviors used, such as you don't want to hear any kind of swear words. If you hear a swear word, no matter what, the consequences are going to be X, and you decide what the consequences are. Another thing is eye rolling. I know personally at my house, I don't put up with the eye rolling. If you have to communicate with me in a conversation where there's going to be eye rolling, the conversation's done,
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So, and this is just part of the parent taking control of, being in charge of the family environment and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate for that family. So have that conversation with your kids beforehand so that they know what is going to happen if they break any of these kinds of communication rules in the family.
I like that. That could be like a family meeting conversation too. That you're being proactive.
And sometimes too, they can have a little input in that. So, there's kind of these borderline words like, I don't know, stupid.
Yeah.
Maybe your kids think it's okay to use the word stupid and you don't, but maybe there can be some negotiation there.
Sure.
So that gives them some buy-in to this family rule.
Got it.
Yeah.
Any other tips that you have for eliminating back talk?
Yeah. A big one. Here's a big one that I often bring up to parents that they don't think about is reinforcing behavior that you do want to see. So oftentimes we just really focus in on the behavior that is annoying us about our kids. But when we see our kids reading a book calmly, or say you had a conversation that was really rewarding between you and your kid, often I find parents don't reinforce that.
Right.
It is what it is, right? But when we catch our kids being good, when we catch our kids being the kid that we want them to be, we really need to reinforce that. And this is something that I've noticed lately with my daughter, with my 13-year-old, that has worked really well. And she was a little bit of a back talker and kind of dramatic in her talk. And I've noticed lately she likes to sit down with me and just have a conversation about life. And I've noticed that at the end of that conversation, I'll just say something like, man, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope we can talk like this more. I learned a lot from you today. And then I've noticed we have more conversations like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so important because we do, at least I do, give a lot of attention to those negative behaviors, but it's those positive ones. Because you don't necessarily feel that negative emotion and feel compelled to, react to it. You're feeling a positive emotion, but you're right. It's just as important to kind of commend them for that.
Right.
And
when our kids are little, of course, it's something different. When you catch them playing with a toy by themselves, for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Reward them with a verbal, attaboy or something. And you need to be careful in your compliments to kids, especially as they get older, because they could really see through sort of those insincere blanket compliments, oh, good job, good girl. They really want to notice that parents are noticing their individuality and that they are trying. So you really have to be a little bit deeper in your complimenting and just, and even kind of point out how their good behavior makes you feel and how it makes you feel proud of them.
I like that. You also have an advanced technique, and I feel like my listeners are advanced enough to hear it. So can you share that advanced technique?
Yes. So I call this the advanced technique because I don't think you should start out with this one.
Sure.
This should be after you've used the other tools and you've noticed that the backtalk behavior has reduced. Backtalk will always be there. It's one of those behaviors that just will come out from time to time. But when you've noticed the back talk has reduced quite a bit and suddenly your child is back talking again, and this especially works for preteens and teenagers, try to validate what is going on behind that back talk. And validating isn't complimenting, and it's not telling them good boy. Validating is actually just understanding why they're telling you what they're telling you. It's putting yourself in their shoes. So if your child comes home, for instance, one day after school, and you ask about their day, and they just, give you some really disrespectful comment, just take a step back and say, wow, you sound really frustrated right now. And you don't have to agree with what they said. You don't really have to challenge what they said. But when you validate what the emotion that's going on behind that back talk, oftentimes it opens up the door for them to tell you more. And then afterwards, you can say, I'm glad we were able to talk about this. I just would appreciate it if you wouldn't be disrespectful at first. Just tell me that you need time or that you'd like to talk.
So when you're doing that validation and you say you sound frustrated, is it then a question like, what's going on?
Yeah. And it's magical in the sense that it's a way that kids connect with parents. It's instead of the parent coming at them and saying, you're doing something wrong or what's going on here. It's just you're connecting with your kid. And when they feel connected with you, they feel safer to open up with you and really let you in.
That makes so much sense. What a great way to end the conversation, Dr. Becca. This has been fantastic. I really love this topic. I hope we can have you back on another time because it sounds like you've got a wealth of knowledge for parents. So we'll make sure that we do that. If people want to find out more about you and your blog, how might they do that?
Sure. They can read my blog and the articles there at parentingthemodernfamily.com. And I could definitely connect with them there.
Excellent. And of course, you can find life hacks for working moms at the website, LH4WM.com, or just lifehacksforworkingmoms.com. Also, if you like the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe in iTunes so you don't miss an episode. You can also get it on Stitcher Smart Radio. On behalf of Dr. Becca and myself, we'd like to thank you for joining us for this episode of Life Hacks for Working Moms, and we'll see you next time.